All right, Nick, let's talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks. Everyone is excited about the offensive side of the ball with Carolina. When we look at the defense, there could be some concerns, but no longer, especially because one guy in particular is really stepping up, and some really important former Gamecocks are giving him major praise. We'll get into that in all just 1 second here. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one guy on the defensive side of the ball is really stepping up, especially when it is needed most. Let's get into this article, then we can dive into all the details on the other side. So, this is over from 24/7 Sports. This is broken up into a couple different parts here of the article, but mainly it's everybody talking about linebacker Fred Johnson and how well he's been doing so far for the Gamecocks. So, first, earlier on this season, Demetrius Knight Jr. on Fred Johnson says he's going to be off the charts as long as he continues to grow and truly learn and absorb, truly be a sponge like he has in our linebacker room. That was senior Demetrius Knight talking about Johnson. Going on to next, let's talk about another guy who went well in the draft, Nick Amanwari. I said he's a dude that a lot of fans haven't really seen, but in practice, he's made some crazy plays. So I can't wait for him to show what he can do next year. Again, two really great Gamecocks that moved on to the NFL this season, talking about how good Fred Johnson was and how much expectations they have from him. But finally, let's talk about a guy that's seen him in practice this year. Defensive coordinator Clayton White's on Fred Johnson. Said defensive coordinator Clayton White said Fred Johnson is definitely ready to handle the expectations put on him by those who came before. He says we have to do a good job of bringing him along physically. You can't find a better looking physical or faster linebacker that's out there. White told thebigspur.com. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, and it's a 4.4. It's an easy 4.4 and twice. That's part of it. It's going to be easy for him. The physical part is easy. It's going to be my job and Coach Money's job to do a good job of coaching him and putting him in the right spots. He's a smart young man. Both of his parents are in the military, so he's built the right way in regard to discipline and humbleness. You love to hear that. He has everything you want. He's a great, great kid. So, again, two of the better South Carolina players in the last, 5-10 years. And we're talking about Amanwari, we're talking about Demetrius Knight Jr. Come in, say this guy is making plays all over the practice field. You haven't seen him hit the field yet, but they're really excited about him. You hear the defensive coordinator, Clayton White, come out and talk about, hey, this guy, he's a physical phenom. He's a sophomore, and he's already so big and physically, adept to be a linebacker at the SEC level. But also, he's got humbleness. He's got discipline. He's got all the character attributes you need here. It is looking really good for Fred Johnson to take over the helm at the middle of the field. I know they brought in a transfer guy from Florida State as well, but Fred Johnson is looking really good. And it is definitely when the Gamecocks need him most. So let's take a peek. This list right here is all of the big names. This isn't even all of the names because some undrafted free agents got in here, but these are the big names the Gamecocks lost on the defensive side of the ball alone right here. Got Amanwari at safety, TJ Sanders at defensive tackle, Demetrius Knight Jr. at linebacker, Kyle Kennard at defensive end, and Tonka Hemingway at defensive tackle. All great players, all guys I think are going to go on and be successful in their own right. But when you lose this many people at the college level, it's not that big of a deal because you're recruiting, you're growing, you hope that you're developing guys to come up through the ranks. But in that aspect, someone has to come up. Someone has to step up and be the guy that next season. And it seems like Fred Johnson is that guy. And I think it's going to be direly important because, as I sort of alluded to, everyone's excited about this offense. The offense has been really fantastic for South Carolina. Lenore Sellers is going to be a special quarterback. But when you look at what the secret sauce to South Carolina's success was last year, much people would say, well, it's a quarterback play. Everything was really good. But when we look at this PFF ranking chart here, there's a different story being told. If you look at the top, this isn't even SEC. This is the top teams in all of college football. See South Carolina tied for ninth right there for defensive ranking, a 92.1 PFF defensive grade. This is a team that prided itself on having a very strong defense. So defense is going to be critically important. Offense, wasn't bad. I think it's going to improve. They're going to do really well offensively, but they have to keep up the defensive performance if we want to see them be as successful or even more successful than they were last year. And having guys step up, especially a vocal leader in the backfield at the linebacker position, is going to be crucially important. So I'm happy to hear Fred Johnson seems like he is that guy. And from what people are saying, a guy that went from relatively unknown special teams, got in a couple of plays last year, is going to come onto the scene very quickly and be a big time star for the South Carolina Gamecocks here. I think Fred Johnson, definitely a guy to keep your eyes on if you haven't already. But this is something special, I think, working up for the Gamecocks. Curious what your thoughts are on all of this, Nick. But before we get to you, South Carolina fans, in the comment section below, we showed the NFL draft guys that are going into came out in the 2025 NFL draft. But this team, we know they've produced a lot of great defensive players, but not necessarily linebackers. We don't hear too much about the linebackers. They don't go on to quite as much success at the next level. So let us know in the comment section below, who's your favorite South Carolina Gamecock linebacker of all time? There's a lot of good ones in recent memory. Obviously, Demetrius Knight Jr. is a guy who came out before him a while ago. Sky Moore was really good. So just let us know. Go through the annuals in your head. Let us know your favorite South Carolina linebacker of all time in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything for the Gamecocks here?
Well, I think it's important to understand that Johnson was a four-star recruit. I think he was ranked, what, like 110 or 100, something like that nationally. So this isn't like some nobody, right? And not that there can't be, walk-ons or lower-level recruits that can become great players. But like a Coach White mentioned, this is a guy with great physical tools, was a top-flight recruit. He was just behind the depth chart with some really good players with a really veteran, well-playing defense last season. We're seeing him emerge now, kind of live up to that physical talent. We have to see how he does on Saturdays, but it's obviously good to see that everyone is really high on him. And I love the fact that so many really good former players have come out and said really good things. That's probably the biggest indication, because one of the things that can happen when you're a starter on a team, you're a star on a unit that's really good, is that you can keep other good players behind you, certainly in college, really kind of down and out and not getting a lot of publicity and a lot of attention. And look, that happens all the time. It happened with Alabama, right? For so many years under Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Georgia recently has kind of had the same kind of effect, where they're just so deep and so stacked. They have just their first string is so good, and they all go to the NFL, and then someone comes along the next season and is a superstar. Well, where was this guy? Everyone asks. Well, he was buried in the depth chart. Look, that's going to happen. We have good guys, NFL guys at the top of the depth chart, and I think that's what we're seeing here with Johnson. Now, in terms of South Carolina's defense as a team, you bring up a phenomenal point. Everyone fell in love with Lenora Sellers correctly with his performance last season, but really the strength of the team was their defense. You mentioned the analytics, but it's not just the analytics. The raw numbers point to how good they were defensively last year. If you look at their numbers, and I just pulled up here, they were fourth in the SEC in total yards per game given up there. They were about a little bit less so good, about eighth or so in terms of giving up passing yards per game, but in overall points, they were fifth. So this was a easily top half defense in the SEC. This was a quality group defensively, especially when you consider that, all the powers that are in the SEC defensively, the guys that went on to go to the postseason, things like that. So Carolina was a very good defensive team last year. Doesn't get all the publicity because of how good Lenore Sellers was, but the reality is they won a lot of games, certainly early on the back of their defense. And with a lot of guys leaving to the NFL, there are some concerns, right? People talk about Sellers year two should springboard Carolina forward. You could get more offensive production, but if you score 4 more points per game on offense, let's say, but you surrender 4 more points per game on defense, you're basically staying in the same spot, right? You're rowing the boat in circles there. So what you need is some of these young guys to step up. That's why it's so important that Johnson is doing good things, getting ready to break out and become a star for the Carolina Gamecocks. Because if their defense doesn't stay at the same level or improve, it almost doesn't matter if Lenore Sellers gets a little bit better, right? If again, like I said before, if the defense drops and if the defense was here and the offense was here last year, and then the defense drops and the offense goes like this, you end up in the same middle ground, right? You want the defense to stay at the same level and then the offense to increase to that, right? That's how you get better as a team, obviously. So when you look at Sellers improving, the offense improving, I think that will happen, even though guys like Rocket Sanders, of course, are now gone to the National Football League. I think it's going to be a much better unit offensively. All the attention, I think, is very well warranted. But defensively, getting guys to step up, new starters to emerge is absolutely critical. And I think it also speaks to the recruiting job that Shane Beamer and the South Carolina staff has done and the culture they're building. You got a guy who is a four-star recruit with all those great physical tools. I guarantee you his phone was blowing up over the past year or so with guys saying, hey, listen, here's some NIL money. You want to transfer? You come here, you can play. You come there, you can play. We'll give you $250,000. We'll give you 100,000, whatever it is. And despite that, despite all those temptations, now I'm assuming happened. I have no reporting, but today's college football world, you can kind of pretty much guarantee that that kind of thing was going on. He decided to stay. Johnson decided to stay, likes the culture, likes the coaching staff, likes the environment, likes the team's chances. So we're talking about a three-pronged report here where we've got a young guy breaking out who is buried behind the depth chart, and the past stars really like him. That's a good sign. It's in a definite area of need as they're trying to keep their defense elevated or even improve. And it also speaks to the culture, number three here. And I think that's sort of the underrated aspect of what's going on in Columbia right now. The environment that Shane Beamer has created with the Gamecocks, a good group of guys, a lot less reliant on transfers. They use transfers and they'll lose some guys in the transfer, but a lot less reliant on transfers, a really good sort of almost traditional roster building program. Not 100%. Look, it's 2025. You got to do what you got to do, but they're not going out there and spending $100 million to try and, they're not like Texas Tech that's, buying recruits and buying transfers. They're not like a lot of other programs that are following that same model. I think Carolina under Shane Beamer has done a good job finding guys that want to come to Carolina and work under him and his staff and stick it out until it's their time to shine. Johnson has followed that model. And again, I think it's a sign that Shane Beamer's culture, his strategies, his entire approach to this program has been the right one, slow, steady, methodical, and hopefully it leads to a really successful season this 2025 campaign.
Yeah, Nick, and I think that's the key here is this is all about growth. And I want to say one thing there. It's not like every star left South Carolina. Obviously, Dylan Stewart's still up front. He's going to be fantastic. So there's no like sky is falling on the defense side of the ball. But when you lose that many talented players, because that list is, definitely a lot of really great players leaving the South Carolina. And like I think the point you brought up is important. Veteran guys that have been playing for a few years over the course, and that's like you said, attributed to Shane Bieber's recruiting, but also retainment of the players on that roster. Something very impressive that a lot of people don't talk about is this team is something special. And I think that this is a good program, has good recruiting, and they're on the verge of breaking out. A guy like Fred Johnson here flying under the radar could be one of the pieces that, okay, if we can just keep these guys on the roster, it's that growing trend that, hey, we've got this guy, he's good. We've got some other guys that are good. If we can keep these guys here, they don't want to leave, and they know, all right, we got a program where we can send guys to the NFL. You can come to South Carolina and just sit behind some talented guys and wait for your turn, but you still get your chance to make it to the big show. That is going to be the key here. I think Fred Johnson is an example of this. When we see him hit the field and what he's able to do this year, I think people are going to be impressed. So I think things are going in the right direction for South Carolina, not just talking about this year. I think this Fred Johnson example is going to be crucial for the future because this will be an example of, hey, in the Shane Beamer era, we've gotten all these guys here. They've waited their turns. They've been veteran players on this team. They go to the NFL. And now the next level of guys that sat behind him, hey, I was willing to wait. Now it's my turn. I'm going to see myself explode onto the scene, be a big-time player. I'm excited to see this. Really excited to see some Gamecock football coming not too far from now.